Okay.
Okay.
Forgive the confusion.
Yes, love technology. Hi, this is Tammy Wallace from Radford University, and we're going to share very quickly to integrate video into our candidates' course experiences. And we're also going to talk about the supports we put in place to successfully implement video via Athena into our programs. Are we advancing our own slides?
They're going to advance for you.
Okay.
Just say advance to the next.
Okay, yes, thank you. So moving on to context, so just to give you a little bit about who we are and where we are. We're located in Southwest Virginia, 36 miles south of Roanoke in the Blue Ridge Mountains. We were founded in 1910 as a state normal school for women, and we have a proud history of preparing teachers in Virginia and all across the country. We have 19 educator preparation programs, elementary, middle, all areas of secondary and special education, the fine arts, as well as health and PE and foreign languages. We also have graduate programs in educational leadership, literacy, counselor education. We graduate approximately 200 students a year in our programs. We place them in both rural and urban contexts. So Roanoke, Virginia would be an example of an urban context, and deeper Southwest Virginia, the Floyd area or Giles, an example of a rural context. We first implemented or integrated video into our programs about 4 years ago. We started with a couple of faculty members as a small pilot, and they gave feedback to the members of the faculty in the School of Teacher Education and Leadership about using video with students, and we're very excited about having that opportunity to engage students in really meaningful conversations based on video, what they saw. And so after that first year, the director and the faculty decided that everyone would jump in and use Athena. And so we had a lot of faculty helping each other by giving ideas about how they were using it with students in their practices, things like lunch and learn sessions. Different faculty members would share their expertise, if you will, using that piece and sharing new insights as to what they gained in using that with their students. Moving into challenges implementing this, of course, is the training for everyone, training for students, supporting faculty. The faculty did a really nice job supporting one another through those informal conversations and professional developments they had with each other. We decided to institute Athena across all of our educator preparation programs, beyond the ones inside of our School of Teacher Education and Leadership. We do have programs associated in colleges other than the College of Education and Human Development. So this year, all of our programs are using that format, and we are using a clinical course fee to take care of the charges associated with using the tool. And every student in a field experience are using it. We even have our graduate students in the counselor education program using that platform this year as well. And so things are working out well. We're still sharing what we learn, and we're excited about what using video is doing for our candidates. So the next slide, please. So what is it doing for our candidates? Well, we're seeing a lot more depth in their level of reflection. You know, viewing themselves helps them focus on concrete aspects of their teaching, right? Things to focus on. So, for example, whether it's questioning strategies or how they're using formative assessments or even noticing and responding to student behavior, being able to see that allows for that deeper reflection. It also helps facilitate better dialogue between our university supervisors and our candidates. It helps the candidate to actually be able to see what that supervisor has observed. So that doesn't give them the opportunity to deny what the faculty members saw in the observation, because we can pull up the video and there it is, and there's something specific. Whether it's something that they're doing really well or an area needing improvement, it just anchors that conversation. In addition to reflection, our candidates are also using video to help them be more proactive. So if they want to try out a new instructional strategy and test it out before they implement it with the children in their classrooms, it gives them an opportunity to practice that in a real space that's safe, and then to invite the supervisor in to offer feedback on that strategy before using it with the students. And it also has helped our students engage in collaborative communities of practice. And Dr. Lasanti is going to give you some examples of what she's been doing with students in her communities of practice.
Could you please advance 2 slides? You notice this one says typical challenges, the next one says what is video done for our candidates, and now we need to move to the next one.
Oh, I didn't know.
Good afternoon. I am Melissa Lasanti, and I am here today with my partner Liz Altieri, and we actually use Athena in all of the ways you just heard. We have found that video reflection is really enhancing the process that we use to reflect and collaborate with our interns, and one of the examples that we have really enjoyed developing, and it's taken some time and we learn something every year, is our circle of practice model. And Liz's and my interns, we co-supervise because Liz is in special education faculty and I am in elementary education faculty, and our interns are actually collaboratively placed for a semester. So they co-plan, co-teach, and co-assess. And that means we have a pretty urgent need around developing skills in professional communication and collaboration, how to give feedback to each other, how to know what's working for all of the students in the room all the time, how we make the most effective use of both of those human resources with the students. And so the video tool really helps us do that, because it's even easier than to supervise and follow 2 adults around the room when you have that video kind of keeping an eye on one intern while we may be observing and watching the other intern. So we know that our students need to leave us ready to participate in some key reflective and collaborative environments, whether it's going to be grade level teams, departmental structures, learning communities. All of these now are ways that we expect teachers to participate and see to their own growth and development. And so in the process of doing that, we found that we could actually group our students together into circles of practice, and in those circles of practice, we actually attend a specific instruction on how we give each other positive and specific feedback, how we help each other generate questions for study or reflection, how we help each other by supporting noticing and observation, how we accurately identify our strengths and areas for growth. We actually look at how we share ideas in ways that are supported by literature and research. All of these kinds of things. The commenting function on our video tool really helps us link to literature and methods courses. We encourage them to make connections to the skills that we've really targeted in seminar. Liz and I, in the process of supervising over the course of a couple of weeks, may notice a pattern in a skill that needs development across the cohort, and we turn that into our focus skill, and we do some reading, and we look at some baseline videos of ourselves, and then we go and apply that skill over the next couple of weeks and record ourselves a couple of times and look at it. So our students are grouped with 3 other peers in other grades and across 2 schools. Those target skills really help them focus in on what we want them to deliberately practice, but then they always inevitably launch other inquiries. As the students are looking at themselves through one lens, they end up seeing connections to some of the other practices they've already heard about in their methods courses. Each leader has a group leader, and that person alerts the supervisor when the group has finished their exploration and is really ready to get then the supervisor's take. And the purpose of this really is, when they leave us, we want them to be independent learners. We want them to know how to work with peers and learn from peers, and also to study themselves and identify their own areas for growth and practice. So Liz is just going to tell you a little bit about what we've noticed in our students as they participate in these communities.
Okay, and if you'll advance to the next slide, please. This gives you a visual of what we're trying to accomplish and what our students are actually doing. So what you'll see is that this is a particular example where they were doing a read aloud of Harry Potter. We actually chose, because these are very early field experience students, to pick one skill at a time to work on. We have found that it's not until they are much more sophisticated teachers that they can look at themselves, the big picture of how am I doing as a teacher. So we start with one skill at a time, and in this case we're looking at interactive read-alouds. And you'll see here how the student made a comment to how she tied to something that was presented in a class, and she was able to use it here. So we're looking at application of practice, application of evidence-based strategies, and the fact that students themselves are able to comment, oh, look at how I use this here. If you'll advance to the next slide, this is where they did I Am Yoga read aloud. And one of the things we do is we ask them to ask us questions as well. This was on their last of the 3 videos that they worked on, where they were a bit more sophisticated, and they could say, what didn't I think of, or what do you think of what I did here? And they actually asked, what is your impression of the style of read aloud that we used? And again, we talked about how you're actually integrating practice, the practice of movement, into read alouds. To give you also an anecdote that I want to share with you, when we're really looking at larger impact on practice, we had a very quiet intern who didn't make good eye contact with students. Part of this was cultural for her, and she wasn't very expressive. And both her cooperating teacher had given her that feedback after, your typical, I'm going to observe you and give you feedback. We had given her that feedback. It wasn't until she looked at a series of videos for herself and was able to reflect on her own practice that she said, oh my gosh, now I see what you were saying, and I didn't really get what you were saying before.
And I think one of the pieces that was so powerful for her was that she was in a circle of practice and seeing other peers enact the strategies, the same strategies she was trying to enact, and recognizing the level of engaged presence they were bringing to that skill that she wasn't necessarily, and it was giving her a model that she could approximate and replicate for herself.
And we would share with you that we're probably the only ones who are using Athena right now within this community of practice model. I use it with graduate interns in special ed as well, where we're using it more where the student is self-evaluating based on our evaluation rubric. So we're actually trying it in a variety of ways, but we have found this community of practice model to be very powerful. So if you advance to our last slide, please.
And so we obviously continue to grow and get a little bit better at this all of the time. And so some of the things that we've brainstormed for our next steps are how we involve cooperating professionals in some of this networking, how we might use some of the video to build electronic portfolios for prospective employers, and then always, always, always deeper applications and discussion.
Any questions?
Yes, so we had one question was how many faculty are involved in this work?
There are about 40 faculty members who supervise in all of our programs, so I would say 40, yes.
Gotcha. And then another question was, let me make sure I get the wording right, who decides what to videotape?
So at this point, a lot of those decisions are actually made either within the program area or within the supervisor's preference or structure. So for example, in my program area in elementary education, we have certain things that we all have in common, certain pieces that we all want all of our students to experience, and then we also, though, have the intellectual and academic freedom to use a model like circle of practice, which is something I I think is really important for them to be equipped for when they leave here. So we actually still have a fair amount of flexibility, but at the same time, I think that's one of the reasons why we've made it such a standing agenda item on departmental meetings and program area meetings, so that way we can ensure that our students are at least getting a consistent opportunity to practice and reflect on their videos. But I think the important thing is that different programs have different needs instructionally, and different supervisors have different placement structures and different partnerships with different schools, and so having that flexibility to make the right decision for the outcome we want, I think has been an asset.
I will tell you that I sit in on the leadership meeting for the School of Teacher Education and Leadership, and one of the things we've been currently discussing is that maybe what we would have common across our programs is that there would be some measure that captures a video application of high leverage practices.
Mhm. We have one more question, or actually it's kind of two. Are coaching teachers trained using the equipment as well, and how do you go about doing that?
So you mean the collaborating professionals who are in the schools where the interns are placed?
I believe so, based on this question.
Okay, yes. So if we're talking about our cooperating teachers, that's our next step.
Okay.
It's how we might involve cooperating professionals. Right now, all of that coaching work happens through the cohort and through the university supervisor and student relationship.
And to add on that, we've had training, we've had lunch meetings, we've coached each other at our school meetings. We've had some folks who've been successful, model some of the strategies that they're using. So in some ways, we're also using a coaching model for ourselves.
Great. Any further questions?
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have one more. What resources and materials would you suggest for others who are interested?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the things I think that's important is that when you're getting ready to go to the video coaching idea, as powerful as it is, one of the things we ran into very quickly was that our interns actually needed some coaching on what equipment to have readily available. Now, ours really use, believe it or not, a lot of our video is cell phone video or iPad video. So it's pretty simple for them to capture the pieces that they need. Thinking just in terms about sound quality, sometimes we recommend some relatively inexpensive, and are in the process of kind of looking at how we might acquire some to make them available in schools, microphones that would enhance some of the sound quality. So from a materials perspective, there is that kind of piece to consider. The supervision piece is really most valuable when you can hear what the teacher's asking and what the students are responding. So that's helpful. And the other piece is just thinking through, we've looked at a variety of resources, things like Focus on Teaching, which is a text on how we might use video with teachers and things like that. And to a certain extent, a lot of it is just the regular materials that are generated through classroom practice and implementation.
And I'm going to add one funny story because you need to know that it takes some time to work out all the glitches. So we had one of our interns, it was a very active classroom, and her cooperating teacher said, well, I'll do the video for you. So she held the phone while she herself was teaching a group to video
Yes.
our intern.
Yes.
So we've had to learn. We also scaffold step by step. So we have our interns just practice loading up a 15-second video in which you introduce yourself. And then in our seminars, we have them practice making a comment. So we actually have them practice each of the technology skills before we can really get into the using this for observing and commenting and reflecting.
But they do get good at it quickly.
Great. And we have one last question for the Radford group. Did you have any privacy challenges, specifically around taping students?
So that's an interesting question. And I think it's different depending on which supervisors you talk to and in which counties they work. We're very fortunate. We work in a school division. Liz and I work with a school division that they have certain photographic releases and so forth already in place, and because this tool is so secure, and because they have teachers doing videos for national boards and things like that, they're very understanding of the fact that this is a within classroom relationship. It's not something, and that's one of the reasons why we have not gone the route yet of using it as portfolio evidence, is because right now it just stays internal to the cohort. It does not move beyond that, and that's part of our privacy commitment with the school division. So they're letting some of those existing policies become our umbrella as well.
And just to add one more thing, we meet monthly with our superintendents in our partnership districts, and before we fully implemented Athena, we talked to them about permissions and assured them that the platform was secure and we would have no compromises there. So,
right. And so then we just get permission if we need a video, we get permission from the appropriate folks.
Right.